Welcome to Mr. Gister, a quick and dirty take on the historic, the everyday, and the weird. I want you to think for a minute about the amazing things that war has given us. No, I'm not talking about the wanton destruction of entire civilizations or the careless suspension of human rights, although I know these have led to the best movies. I'm talking about the byproducts of war, what humanity is able to pull out of the proverbial ashes and use when two groups of people figure out the most technologically advanced ways to wipe each other out. Think jet engines, weather radar, the internet, and perhaps the most divisive wartime innovation of them all, mayonnaise. Flip around that old jar of mayo in your fridge and you will find that it basically consists of oil, egg yolk, and vinegar. There's some other bullshit mixed into store-bought brands so that the preservative-ophobics have an excuse to make their own mayonnaise, but these are the three key ingredients. Mayonnaise is an emulsion. For those of you rusty on your basic chemistry, an emulsion is basically what you get when you are able to mix two or more things that are generally unmixable, but can be mixed in the presence of an emulsifier. Imagine, just for a second, that you have three friends. Their names are oil, water, and vinegar. Vinegar and water are bros, they're tight, they hang out all the time, but they hate oil. They talk shit about him, they make fun of his stupid hair, and they avoid him at all costs. But then you come along. Your name is Emulsifier Jones. When you invite everyone over to your house for the big sports game, oil, water, and vinegar can all sit on your couch together, drink beer. They won't tolerate each other forever, but their relationship stabilizes for a bit in your presence. In the case of mayonnaise, oil and vinegar are key ingredients. The third key ingredient, egg yolks, contains a lot of water. The water, oil, and vinegar form the base of mayonnaise. But without an emulsifier, they won't mix. They'll separate in the jar like that 8th grade science experiment we've all done. Luckily, egg yolks also contain protein and lecithin, both of which are, you guessed it, emulsifiers. So when oil is slowly added to a mixture of egg yolks and vinegar, while whisking everything vigorously to evenly spread out the oil, boom, you get mayonnaise. Like most things, mayonnaise does not have a clear-cut tale of how it came to be. The most common theory, supported by a whole bunch of secondary sources but nothing super concrete, is that mayonnaise comes from the French. To set the stage a bit, let's imagine the mindset of the Duke of Richelieu's personal chef at the very start of the 7 Years' War. This is the time period that led to the classic chef image, so if it helps, think of a perpetually annoyed, mustachioed Frenchman in a tall white hat. The chef's name has been lost to history, so let's just round out the image and call him Pierre. Now, the French Duke that Pierre is cooking for has just kicked off the whole war by leading a successful invasion on the city of Mahon on the Isle of Majorca, off the coast of what is now Spain. After the invasion, the Duke was craving chicken and sauce. There's a whole lot of sauce innovation going on in France during this time. You have this whole weird concept involving mother sauces and daughter sauces, which I'm not going to get into, but suffice it to say the French take their sauces seriously. So Pierre was under a lot of pressure to cook the Duke his white sauce to celebrate the victory. Traditional French white sauce is made from cream and egg yolks, but poor Pierre was unable to find any cream anywhere on the island. So Pierre came up with a special sauce of his own, using olive oil instead of cream. The Duke loved Pierre's new special white sauce, and so Pierre went back to France and popularized it. Because it was invented in the port of Mahon, it became known as Mayonnaise. Now this story is fun and all, but most likely that chef is at least partly full of shit. At this point we need to talk about some A foods, aioli and aspic. Aioli is basically mayonnaise plus garlic. Its name literally translates from Spanish to oil garlic. The Spanish had been making something called aioli beau, which is suspiciously similar to the emulsified mayonnaise we know today, for centuries. Pierre claims that he had a moment of inspirational resourcefulness and tried to just mix egg yolks and oil instead of cream. But now it's thought that he saw the locals making mayonnaise and stole their idea, taking it for his own. It's not like the locals were going to make a stink about a stolen mayonnaise recipe. Their whole city had literally just been stolen. Now for the aspic. If you're unfamiliar with aspic, think about what happens to your post-Thanksgiving turkey gravy when you put it in the fridge. Think meat jello. That's basically what aspic is. And there was a recipe for aspic which folks called mayonnaise that had been in use for a few decades, and it was often served with chicken. So what most likely happened is that the French aspic mayonnaise, Spanish aioli beau, and Pierre's victory chicken sauce were distilled over a few decades in common language, and by the early 1800s there were recipes for mayonnaise resembling the white sandwich spread we know today. One other little wrinkle in this whole mayonnaise saga was brought about by a gentleman named Alexandre Balthazar Laurent Grimald de la Reynière. Reynière was a very wealthy lawyer and a politician, and he's lauded as being the first food critic. He's also undoubtedly the biggest douchebag in mayonnaise history. Just look at this guy. He screams culinary snobbery. One of the cookbooks he produced included a recipe for an aspic-type sauce called mayonnaise. The more astute among you might see how similar mayonnaise is to mayonnaise. You see, Reynière refused to use the name mayonnaise because the word, quote, is not French, and Port Mayonnaise is, quote, not known for good food. So he decided to go with mayonnaise for no other discernible reason than it would be named after the city of Bayonne, which has, quote, many innovative gourmands and produces the best hams in Europe. There are a few other components to this already confusing etymological exploration, so I'm just going to leave it there for now. But if you're interested, definitely check out some of the articles referenced in the description. Bottom line though, when the dust settled, somewhere around 1820, folks in the Western world started whipping up oil, eggs, and lemon juice in their kitchens, and they called it mayonnaise. So Europe was fun and all, but let's shift our focus to the greatest country of them all, Seychelles. Alright, now that we focus on Seychelles, let's look at the USA. In the early 1900s, there was a deli owner in Philadelphia named Edward Schlorer. His wife made some really bang-up homemade mayonnaise, so Schlorer had the bright idea of using her recipe to mix up massive batches of the stuff in his back room, throw in some preservatives, and sell it in jars at his deli. By 1911, the trademarked Mrs. Schlorer's mayonnaise was all the rage in Philly, and it was the first commercially produced jarred mayo. Right around the same time in New York, literally the exact same thing happened, but this time it was German immigrant Richard Hellman and his wife Margaret. Richard would give out free spoonfuls of his wife's mayonnaise at his deli on Columbus Avenue. By 1914, he was selling them in glass jars as Hellman's Blue Ribbon Mayonnaise. I would not say that mayonnaise consumption exploded at this point because mayonnaise was already a super popular spread to be made at home, but with the early 20th century industrial boom in the US, mayonnaise was able to be mass-produced, jarred, and sold in grocery stores all over the place. Its popularity even led to the development of cheaper imposter mayonnaises, and during World War II, Americans and Europeans alike missed their mayonnaise so much that during the egg rationing, they developed an eggless mayo, something the vegan community still concocts to this day. As an interesting little epilogue to the story of mass-produced mayo in the US, you might notice that Hellman's and Best Foods mayo have an eerily similar packaging scheme. Depending on where you are in the US, you likely either only know one or the other. Hellman's was actually purchased by Best Foods in 1932, and not wanting to freak out customers, they kept the Hellman's name in different parts of the country and put blue ribbon branding on both. The branding persists to this day. As for Mrs. Schlorer's, they were purchased by a company called Good Foods, which discontinued the brand in 2016. The writing was sort of on the wall for that one. Nowadays, a jar of mayonnaise can be found in most refrigerators in America, and most of the rest of the world too. Chile has the third largest per capita mayonnaise consumption in the world. They put it on their hot dogs. As any of you who have seen Pulp Fiction will know, the Dutch love dipping their fries in mayo. In Japan, mayo is made from rice vinegar and eaten with vegetables. Its spread is not surprising. It's a good dipping sauce base, it has simple ingredients, and modern industrial equipment can churn out over 250 glopping gallons of the stuff in less than 10 minutes. Speaking of industrial mayo production, if you ever decide to be an elitist and make your own mayo, you will notice that homemade mayo is extremely yellow. Jarred mayonnaise gets its whitishness because separating egg yolks from egg whites is a pain in the ass, and the fat cats at Big Mayo realized they could just mix in whole eggs without sacrificing too much flavor. And the egg whites make the mayo, you guessed it, more white. As popular as mayonnaise is, not everyone is super keen on it.
While mayophobia has not hit the DSM-5 just yet,
it's pretty well documented in popular culture. There is something objectively fucking gross about it. Probably has something to do with its eggy, sour smell, its gelatinous consistency, and its association with male ejaculate. Professor Rachel Herz, a literal expert on disgust, says that, quote, its texture is what makes it most repulsive. It has the ability to wobble and does not sit inert, even though it is not animate. The inert taking on qualities of an animate object can create feelings of disgust. Its moving implies a living thing, and living things can contaminate you. So yeah, jarred mayo is legitimately frightening to some people. But even the mayophobes eat foods all the time that contain mayo. Honey mustard, aioli, basically all the good dipping sauces. Hell, hollandaise sauce is basically warm mayo, with melted butter serving as its oil. Yeah, think about that next time you get your eggs Benedict at brunch with the gals. Snobby food critics, competing delimen, mayophobes, homemade purists, mayonnaise is rife with conflict. This makes sense given it was created, or at least its popularity was kickstarted by, a global war. While its origin is fittingly contentious and murky, there is no doubt today that mayonnaise is a major culinary cornerstone around the world. The global mayonnaise industry is worth $10.8 billion.
So short of a global war between the mayophobes and everyone else, I don't see mayonnaise going away anytime soon. So there it is, just the gist of mayonnaise.
I'm from America, the mayonnaise land, and I spread mayo with my hands. I grab a slice of rye and a slice of ham and a big handful of that eggy jam. Yeah, we're making mayo. Oh, what can I say, oh? You gotta grab an egg, grab a friend, grab some mayo, then take my hand.